Probably not exactly what Tom Corbett needed to hear, Wes.
No, it wasn't. But if you're going to appeal to a very kind of competitive district, you have to appear not to be overly ideological. Yeah. You have to be a can-do person, a person. McGarrigle's basically running on the fact that I can run government efficiently and well. And as a consequence of that, one way is to say, look, let's tax these oil companies that are taking out our natural resources, and let's take that money and put it towards education. Yeah. Right? That's a win-win to suburban voters.
Right. Chris, one of the things that got pointed out, and obviously there's no way that Tom McGarrigle would run away from it, is the fact that, and John Kane has pointed this out on a couple of occasions, is that he had several consecutive years of tax hikes. Probably not what he wanted to hear. Now they just announced that this year they're going to manage to avoid a tax hike. Can John Kane muster enough with that to win this race?
Phil, if on Labor Day you would ask me who was going to win this race, I thought it was John Kane's to win. He would have to do something to lose the race. I think the momentum has shifted. The McGarrigle campaign is very efficient at responding within 2 or 3 days to any attack on TV. You're getting a flyer in your mailbox, quickly. But the Kane campaign seems to have gotten completely off message. In the beginning, they were tying, McGarrigle with these tax increases. Right. I think 4 or 5 consecutive tax increases, tying him to Tom Corbett, tying him to the biggest gas tax in the nation. They've gotten away from that, and I think the campaign of John Kane is foundering right now. And McGarrigle has been very effective at hammering home some of the issues as a union labor leader that have a lot of people's eyebrows raised, and they're not really responding very well.
Right. Wes, is there a problem here potential problem for Tom McGarrigle in Republicans being disillusioned with the governor's race and staying away?
I think not so much, because he's really kind of crafting his message as being an independent Republican, or at least not a Tom Corbett Republican, and trying to run on a track record of who he is and what he wants to do in the future. Right. So I think that's the type of thing that suburban swing voters like to hear is, I'm a partisan, I'm a Republican, but don't sign me up for the entire platform.
Yeah. Chris, one of the astounding things that has come to the fore in this, even in a state Senate race, it ain't cheap out there. They are spending an awful lot of money. They're going to spend $5 million in a state Senate race.
That's exactly right. And I mean, they're all over TV. It's network TV, it's cable TV, you name it. Again, very expensive flyers out there. There's no shortage of money on either side. So, again, they're both trying to get their message out. I just think that recently the Kane campaign has gotten somewhat off message, and McGarrigle has been effective at hammering that home. As far as the turnout goes, it's a myth overall that people split their ticket. That doesn't really happen. You've seen big momentum shifts among the electorate, 2006, 2008, 2010. In this district, they will split their ticket somewhat. The question is, how badly will Corbett do? If Corbett, if Wolf gets 60%, McGarrigle may still be able to win. At some point mathematically, though, as that number goes up, it's going to be impossible for McGarrigle to win. So it's obviously in McGarrigle's interest to have Tom Corbett keep it as much as he can above 40% to give McGarrigle a chance. Otherwise, there's not going to be enough people that will split Wolf McGarrigle.
Mm-hmm. Wes, give me a call on the McGarrigle-Kane race.
That's a tough one. I think for the reasons Chris just mentioned, with Wolf pulling the ticket here, I think it's gonna. I think McGarrigle's not going to win. I think it'll be Kane.
You think really do? Okay, yeah. Chris.
At this point, again, we have the last 2 weeks are always going to be the most explosive. I would give the edge very slightly to McGarrigle right now. I mean, look, when you look at the Kane campaign, there's a couple of questions that come to mind. First of all, what were these guys thinking prior? If you're going to have a union leader become your candidate, that's kind of a polarizing position for half the county. But they're making a lot of money, a lot of hay over the fact that he makes $276,000 a year, which may not be entirely accurate. But again, Kane wasn't coming out and said, "Yeah, some of that was for retirement for my kid's college." Right. But the big issue is, what are you going to do with your job should you become senator? Will you give it up? And his answer so far has been, no, I'm going to keep both.
No intention.
That is really rubbing people the wrong way. Yeah. That's something that clearly should have been discussed, strategized before even announcing your candidacy. Now they're being reactive instead of proactive. They've gotten off the message of comparing McGarrigle to Tom Corbett and so forth. I would give McGarrigle a slight edge as of now.
Yeah, I still think that, specifically because of the fact that in that 26th district, there's still a sizable Republican majority there. That has not been quite as affected as some other areas of the county in terms of the drift over to Democrats. One other odd sort of similar circumstance that we have, again created by a retirement. Amazingly enough, for the first time in more than 3 decades, in 163rd House seat, which represents Upper Darby, Alden, Lansdowne, in there, someone not named Mikosi is going to be sitting in that seat. We have a Democrat, Vince Rangione, who's going to be running against Upper Darby Councilman Jamie Santora. Chris, your quick take on that race?
I just don't think the Republicans are going to hold this. The demographics for that district have changed, and it's going to be very, very difficult to hold that. I think that seat goes Democrat.
Wes, we saw that when the very similar decision, Mario Severa decided it was time for him to get out of Harrisburg, and I think he saw the writing on the wall in that demographic that Chris mentioned. You see the same thing happening here in the 163rd?
I think since I just said Kane would win, I got to do the same thing here as well, right?
All right, we'll get down to the big call and the final call, and I think I know where this is going to go. Chris, we'll start out there with you. Give us a rundown for what happens in the gubernatorial race.
I think it's Wolf 59%. I think the Republicans will end up. Clearly, they're gonna keep the state house. They will probably they'll keep the state senate as well. Nationally, it's going to be Republican year. Republicans should get 51, potentially 53 in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah.
Congress will pick up a few seats as well. It's going to be a Republican year, except for Tom Corbett.
Right, Wes.
I think that the governor will tighten it a little bit. I think he'll probably lose it by about 12 points in that neighborhood. Republicans keep control of both houses of the state legislature and take over the Senate, but it makes no difference in Washington if they do or not.
You know, one of the things that was talked about in this 26th district state Senate race is that the idea with within striking distance with a 27-23 margin for the Republicans in the state Senate, they were looking at a few key races, and this is probably one of them. One of the things that Governor Corbett has been criticized for, and I think rightly so over the last 4 years, is that how little he's been able to get accomplished, even though he has majorities in both the Senate and the House. So let's say that it plays out the way that some people think it would, with Republicans holding control in both the Senate and the House. If Tom Corbett had problems getting things done, how is Tom Wolf going to govern?
I think it's going to be very difficult. Basically, I think that the Republicans have stonewalled as much as they can against Governor Corbett, who's one of their own.
Yeah.
The only way I can see to success is trying to build some sort of consensus, picking off a couple of Republicans that would support the severance tax on Marcellus Shale for the purpose of education. And I think that might be the big thing that they might be able to get accomplished, but that's going to be difficult in the House.
Chris, any hope of anything that along the lines of bipartisanship out there?
I think it's possible. Look, Tom Wolf ran a very good campaign in the primary. His campaign in the fall has not been particularly good. He's made a couple of policy positions out there. One's a graduated income tax, and the political insiders in Harrisburg look at that and say, what are you talking about? That's a constitutional amendment you'd have to do.
Right.
That's ridiculous. What Tom Wolf needs to do to be effective is to put that kind of stuff out of the way, go in there, and in the first 90 days, do, number one, liquor privatization. Get at least a piece of it. Maybe it's 6-packs and wine in the grocery store, something that Tom Corbett wasn't able to do. He could push for the shale tax, probably get it, because there are enough Republicans that would be willing to support that. And take on some of the issues there that Corbett was not able to do. Will the Republicans be obstructionists, or are they going to be willing to work with them? That's going to be the question. But you can only be obstructionist for so long if there's things that the people want out there. And I think liquor is one of them.
Yeah, it certainly has been always high on the list of things that you talk about. And yet, it was obviously one of the 3 items that was on Governor Corbett's agenda. We've had candidates in the last 2 weeks, and one of the things that the Republican House members have pointed out is that, hey, we passed it. It did pass in the House. The first time ever they passed a privatization. And of course, it went over to the Senate and got sort of bollocksed up with the whole transportation package and everything, and sort of fell apart. What is it, that voters should be looking for? Anything in particular in this next 10 days?
I think it's going to be the status quo. I mean, nothing's really moved the needle very much over the last several months when it's come to the gubernatorial election, and without any debates coming up in reference to that, I don't see anything really happening other than perhaps a major gaffe, which is very unlikely for me to either one of these candidates, who generally is not prone to public gaffes.
Right. Chris?
I concur with what Wes says. Unless you've got a couple of really great killer campaign ads that they're about to unleash, and I'm not sure what they would be right now, because if you're Tom Corbett, you really should have done that before to try and close the gap. It's just such a large gap, and whether it's 12 points or 20 points, it's just so insurmountable that I don't think you're going to see a whole lot that's going to change. Again, the big thing is going to be turnout. Can you motivate your base without any real competitive races? For the most part, in the Southeast, I think you're going to see not a whole lot of Republicans come out. Now the question is, will the Democrats come out if they think, oh, my guy's got it, he's in the bag? This Senate race will certainly drive turnout, and that could be critical.
Well, certainly it's going to be an interesting day on Election Day as we go and elect a governor, a crucial state Senate race here in Delaware County, all of our state representatives, as well as 2 congressmen in the 1st and 7th district. But when we all wake up the day after Election Day, I think we're all going to start thinking about 2016. So as our final send-off here, I will ask you very quickly, Wes, give me some names we ought to start thinking about. Presidential, 2016.
I think, part of it is whether or not Scott Walker wins his gubernatorial race in Wisconsin. I think if he does win, I think he's going to be a darling of the right come 2016. I think he's going to have a good record to run on. Still think Christie can be in the mix, and wouldn't be surprised if a Jeb Bush type establishment candidate gets in there. And then I think it's pretty much Hillary for the Democrats.
You think she's definitely in?
It would be difficult not to see that happen.
Chris?
I think, again, a year ago, if you would have asked me, I don't think Hillary was going to run. I think she was tired. I don't think she wanted it. I think with Christie pretty much imploding, I think this is hers to lose on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, if you go with the Jeb Bush or Mitt Romney, you might as well kiss it goodbye. That's not going to happen. I think Walker is too polarizing. There really is not a deep Republican bench, or really Democratic bench after Hillary. Right. I don't see anyone that's emerged right now from the Republican ranks that has any serious gravitas to them. Because I think Christie cannot get over the bridge gate. I think it's going to end up killing him.
All right. There you have it. Quick roundup of we had about 10 days out from election 2014. The consensus being, I guess I've been outvoted to talk about going to the polls, that my belief that Governor Corbett's going to be reelected at this point still looks like a long shot, and we're going to have a real barn burner of a race in the state Senate in 26th district. My thanks to our panel, our good friend Wes Leckrone, a political science professor here at Widener, my columnist Chris Friend. You can see his work every Wednesday in the print edition of the Daily Times and occasionally on Fridays as well in delcotimes.com. This is live from the newsroom. We've been here on our monthly visit at Widener University. We're here with the communications team at Freedom Hall. We'll be back again next month. Hopefully we'll be back next Wednesday night for another edition live from the newsroom every Wednesday night, even though this is Thursday on a special edition. We'll be back next week, 7 o'clock. We'll talk to you then. Thanks.